Hey guys, it's Rachel from The Lorene Lamb, and today I have my September, October, November, and December wrap up. I was really late on filming this. I have quite a lot of books. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty on some of them because some of them are part of a series, but I'm going to try to explain them the best that I can, kind of give you an impression of what I felt like it very briefly because we have a lot of books to talk about. I'm going to try to remember to put the timestamps if you only want to watch a certain month's review because you follow me on Goodreads or something, or you saw in one of my videos something that you were interested in hearing more about. Definitely do so. Also, I'm filming with a new setup, so I hope this looks okay, and yeah, I'm just getting used to this new setup. Anyway, so I'm going to start with the books I read in September, which are all in front of me, so if you hear shifting, that's what's happening. So the first book I read in September is The Preacher by Camilla Lackberg, and this book was really good. It's the second book in the Patrick Hedstrom series. It has 10 books in the series. I'm not sure if the 10th book is the last book in the series or if there's going to be more. I haven't finished it yet, so I didn't want to look that up and spoil myself. But pretty much what you need to know about this series is, I'm not going to spoil this book. This book isn't really a spoiler, but each book contains its own mystery. But the characters, like the police chief Patrick, his family, the other characters in the police station, like certain characters you see in other books, like they continue on. But obviously the main core of the people who work in the police station and other characters that come back for every novel. So every novel you read, you see like certain characters have their lives progress, like do they have children, like what's happening in their careers, and you see new people come and go. And there's a lot of good characters. I definitely recommend reading the series in order, but you can definitely read them out of order and still not be confused. It's actually funny because one of my friends was reading the 10th book a little while ago when I was on the 6th book. Didn't realize, she picked it up like when it first came out like 2 years ago. Didn't realize and loved it, and like didn't even realize it was part of a series, and that's either the last book or the 10th at least in a series. So definitely read them out of order, but I definitely recommend reading them in order if you want to get the progression of the characters' lives that are within every novel. But really like those series. I feel like they're really good mysteries in the sense that they are contained mysteries, but also they're suspenseful, but they also go through the process. So if you like process, I feel like they have a lot of process. They don't really glaze over that, which I do like hearing about the process. It kind of feels very much like a procedural TV show, but with more detail. So if you really like that, then I'm sure you're gonna love that book. The next book I read is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. And this book was so good. It's actually going to be in my favorite books of 2020 video. It's told in, it's almost like verse, but not really. I think stanzas would be the more appropriate terminology, but it follows different characters and their experiences throughout living and just being women and women of color. And it just, I don't know how to describe it without saying that. You see how the stories intersect. Each story, like I am a person who is not a big anthology reader because I'm not a big short story person. The fact that these all contain different characters and to get into their lives, and I was able to fully get into their lives, like be immersed in the story in such a short period of time, or even like 60 pages, which is still short, really made me be like, this is a good book. Because not that that makes it a good book, but you know, like this is a really good book because the fact that it's really, really hard for me, my comprehension, to really get into a short story, and every time I finish a story I just want to know more about the characters. I just can't say enough good things about this book, honestly. Like, really good. Then after that I read Sex and the City and Us by Jennifer Cashin Armstrong, and this book I read because I finished watching the TV show and both films. Obviously the Sex and the City TV show and both films, and this book is pretty much just talking about kind of how the show was developed, what went into the process, the writing behind it. It more so dealt with kind of the process of getting the show, the writers, some storylines, than the actors, but it did still talk about obviously the actors and their lives. But I found it to be a pretty good companion. There's a lot of things, like when I finish a show I usually look it up on Wikipedia, I look up articles, I just kind of want to know as much as I can know, and a lot of this stuff wasn't stuff I was finding easily, so it provided a very good insight. Then I read A Good Neighborhood by Therese Ann Fowler. And this book was one that took me a little while to get into, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. It's very hard to read at certain points because there is a lot of stuff that just makes you want to scream and like brings out so many big emotions. just some of the unjust stuff that happens. So this book is about a woman named Valerie, and it follows her and her biracial son Xavier, who is headed to college in the fall. Valerie's a widow, and she's kind of sad that she's going to have an empty nest. And basically everything's as normal as possible until the Whitmans move in next door, and they're apparently traditional family with a troubled teenage daughter. Brad, the dad of the family, is a local celebrity, and he's made a small fortune as customer service and charm. And his wife Julia was escaping a very hard upbringing. But with little in common except a property line, these two very different families quickly find themselves at odds. First over a historic oak tree in Valerie's yard, and soon after their blossoming romance between their two teenagers. So this book tackles a lot of big issues within. It doesn't sound like it does very much from the description, but there's a lot of big things it tackles. I think it does in a good way, and one of the things I actually really appreciated about this book, I think it's in the beginning of the book. Yeah, the beginning of the book, the author actually acknowledges that, yes, she's coming from a place where she is a white author, needing to create viewpoints for two African American characters who are integral to the story. So she talks about how she approached it with respect and kind of how she went about creating those narratives while acknowledging that she is a white woman and doesn't have the same lived experiences, which I did appreciate that acknowledgement, because I think that's important, especially because when you're reading a book and you only know the author's name and you might not see an author's picture, you don't know, and you also don't know the author's background regardless if you see a picture, because a picture can only tell you so much. You don't know their history, so I felt it was very nice to be transparent, because obviously you want to make sure if you're reading a book that you know if it's kind of own voices, that the authors experience that. So I thought it was something good, and I feel like that should be more so in books that do take on different viewpoints, like even if it's kind of a side character, if that person isn't of the same race, like saying like, you know, this is what I did to prepare and to treat with respect. I just like that. It's transparent, it's honest. Then I read the third book in the Patrick Hedstrom series, The Stonecutter by Camilla Lackberg. I'm not going to really get into that because I explain more so the second book what the series is all about. After that, my last book of September was a very special 90210 book, and this is by Tara Ariano and Sarah D. Bunting. And these two, I love their podcast. So they had a podcast called Again With This. It's still going on. So they reviewed all 10 seasons of the original Beverly Hills 90210, which is one of my favorite shows. Now they're talking about Melrose Place, so I started watching it. If you see it up here, the blue thing. I haven't got through it yet, but I'm going to be catching up on their episodes. They also run another podcast called Extra Hot Great Together, where they discuss pop culture, TV shows. They have like a presentation of an episode where they vote on Game Time. It's a fabulous podcast. I definitely recommend. But as soon as I heard they were releasing a book together, I definitely wanted to buy it. And the fact that it's 90210, it's just the icing on top. And it's so beautiful. Like even inside, there's like pastels. Like it's a pastel dreamboat. And they break down 93 of the absolutely essential episodes. And they're kind of bookmarked by season. So they go like, they introduce the beginning, like who the characters are, who's coming, who's going. Because obviously some characters leave throughout the show. Give them a little description of what they're dealing with. And then sorry, I'm having to flip through this quite a bit. And then each section kind of punctuates with an illustration. So this is season 1. And then the episodes other than 93 essential, whichever ones come from season 1 are there. And then it's truncated like that. And they have little bonus segments in between. And I just really enjoy it. I think if you're a 90210 fan, it's definitely worth diving into. Like, they are kind of harsh on the show and they laugh at it and like, you know, make fun of it and stuff like that. And I am a big fan, but I still find their podcasts funny and hilarious. And, you know, like, I don't always want to listen to a podcast where everybody's like worshipping just because it's like a really like favorite. Some things I agree with, some things I don't, but it still makes it interesting to listen to. Then moving on to October. So in October, I managed to read 5 books. It was kind of a busier month with school and work. I actually started my job in October. So that's why I didn't get to read as much, because it was just the transition. So the first book I read in October was Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now at this present day, I believe I have one more book to read from her, and then I've read her whole, I was going to say discography, but I'm like, that's music. Her whole library of books, so shall we say. And this book is basically about a girl named Hannah who kind of has a decision to make. How do I explain this? So basically Hannah has moved to Los Angeles, and to celebrate her first night, she goes out with her friend. And then there's 2 paths Hannah's life takes. So you see a path where she goes home with her friend and her friend's husband, and another path where she stays with her ex, and kind of it goes from there. So you kind of get to see what would happen depending on what Hannah chose. So you see the concurrent storylines and kind of see how her life would have unfolded depending on what choice she made. And basically there's like kind of even like a love triangle. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this book, and I thought it was interesting. It wasn't my favorite Taylor Jenkins read, but it was definitely interesting the fact that with the parallel timelines, it wasn't about her having one good, one bad. It was about showing how you can have both good and bad in each timeline, which I did enjoy. That wasn't like one clear winner that you'd be like, oh, she should pick that one. And I liked seeing the duality, and the characters were really good. I especially love the friendship between Hannah and her best friend, who I'm forgetting her name right now, but I just found it to be a very like loving female friendship, which I do like to see in novels. Then the next book I read was, well, this was actually a reread for me. It was Burn for Burn by Jenny Han and Cheyenne Vivian. Hope I'm not mispronouncing that. I read this book originally when it came out, and then I kind of lost track of the series, but I kind of wanted something Halloween-esque, and I know this book does delve into the supernatural. It's not really Halloween. Well, it does actually have Halloween in the books, but I just really felt like something like that. So I decided to pick it up. So this book is basically told in 3 perspectives. So you have the 3 main girls, Lila, Kat, and Mary, and they're all going through stuff, but at the end, the thorough line is that they all kind of want revenge on one person in their lives that has kind of screwed them around or made their life miserable. And they all have their different reasons. And basically the plot kind of goes from there without spoiling it too much. And you kind of just see like how, you know, when you want revenge, what happens when you get revenge, the motivations for revenge, that kind of thing. So it was really interesting. I enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. I didn't remember very much from when I originally read it, so it definitely was more new to me, especially getting into the end. I kind of forgot what happened. I forgot it left off on a big cliffhanger, so I was really happy that obviously the second and third books are long out by now. Then the next book I read was The Math Gene, and this is by Keith Devlin. So this book is basically discusses how mathematical thinking evolved and why numbers are like gossip. And it's just an information book, but that's very simplistic. Basically, it discusses how numbers are like gossip, how number instinct is similar to the language instinct, how our math gene kind of developed. I've talked about this ad nauseum in some of my other videos, so I'm just going to leave it there. But if you're interested, I could definitely link some Baba Back to Me's where I discuss it for more details. Then the last 2 books I read in the month of October were The Stranger by Camilla Lackberg and The Hidden Child by Camilla Lackberg. Books 4 and 5 in the series, and I really enjoyed those as well. Then to start November, the next 2 books I read were Fire with Fire and Ashes to Ashes, which is the second and third book in the Burn for Burn series by Jenny Han and Cheyenne Vivian. I'm not going to get into the plot synopses. I'm not going to get into the plots regardless, just because I don't want to spoil anything, but I really liked the conclusion to the series. I hadn't read the second or third book, so they were completely new, and it was just like enjoyable. I actually really enjoyed where the story went. It definitely took me on a lot of twists or turns I didn't expect, so I enjoyed that aspect as well. Then I read Man vs. Math by Timothy Revel. And this book was really interesting. Basically, it talks about everyday math concepts we see. So it talks about like Facebook algorithms, roads, and kind of the processes of are more roads like better or less roads better with different like rules. How do you draw a Pixar circle? So it talks about different math concepts and how we see them in every day. And I was interested in this because when eventually I have my own classroom, I'm teaching math, like I want to make sure that the students see the practical uses of their math, so they're not like, we're just learning this for a test. They can see that this stuff does apply to real life. Like, yes, they might not use it in their everyday life, but it does apply to the general world and scope. And see if I can develop some cool lessons from stuff based on this. And just even like interest piece. It was interesting for me to read. Then I read the 6th book in the, it's a 6th book, right? I hope so. The Drowning by Camilla Lackberg. Yeah, the 6th book, sorry, I was counting. So I read The Drowning by Camilla Lackberg, and that was really good as well. Like usual, I just really enjoy those books in that series. Then I reread another book, Winter in Paradise by Ellen Hildebrand, because the 3rd book was released this year, and I reread them whenever there's a new edition in the series coming out. And this book is, I'm pretty sure I have a review in it. I'm not 100% sure. I know at least the first book I might. I don't have one of the second. But this is one of Elin Hilderbrand's, well, it is her newest winter series. Like, she released a book every June, and then she had a other winter series called Winter Street, and this is her second kind of wintry Christmas time series, even though it's not, it starts after New Year's. So basically this book is about a woman named Irene, and she thinks she has the idyllic life. She has a loving husband. She has her 2 sons. And then one day she gets a phone call saying her husband has been killed in a plane crash in St. John's. And before she can even process this, she's already in the Caribbean trying to understand what happened to her husband, why he was there, and why his boss is being so evasive about the details surrounding his death. Irene and her 2 sons arrive on St. John's and find out her husband had a secret other life. And basically she navigates the fact that she has this betrayal, but she wants to find out more and why and get these answers about this mysterious circumstance. And it does take place after New Year's, but it is kind of like, not really a holiday book, but I always read them around the holiday time. They do release in October. They have, all her winter books typically have released in October, and I wait till I'm on my holiday break from school and from work now, because I do work in a school, so I get the same holiday break for both. So that was really good rereading it. I actually think I enjoyed rereading it this year. I think maybe just because maybe I felt less stressed, because usually I've been reading it after I finish a placement. It's just like my mind's so bogged down. I think it was a little bit easier to enjoy the stories and not feel like I have to read it so fast. Then the last book I read in November was The Lost Boy by Camilla Lackberg, which is the 7th book in the series, and yet again, really. So lastly, I know this has been long. Thank you for sticking with me. I will tell you about my December reads, which I read 8 books. I managed to read more in December because I finished school at the beginning of December for the term on the 7th officially, and then I was just working, so I had a bit of time where I wasn't like obviously doing too much planning, because I had a bit of planning to do for that position, and then I was able to read quite a bit more, so I really enjoyed that. And then I was off on the 18th, so I had quite a bit of the month to actually delve in and read as much as my little heart desired. So the first book I read was What Happens in Paradise by Elin Hilderbrand, which was a reread. It's a second book in the Paradise series, which I just explained a moment ago. Really good. I enjoyed rereading that, and it was making me so pumped for the third one, but I was like, Rachel, wait, because you want to wait till you're on break. Don't want to rush it. And then I read the 8th book in the Patrick Hedstrom series, Buried Angels. After Buried Angels, I was just on a cliffhanger, and I just wanted to read the 9th book, The Ice Child. And that was really good. Just for an update for clarity's sake, I'm currently reading the 10th book, so at the time of this video, I don't know if there's going to be more, and also that's why it's also not included in this wrap-up. Then I read The Meaning of Mariah Carey by Mariah Carey, and this was a really good autobiography. I felt like I learned a lot because I didn't know a lot about Mariah Carey before reading the book. Like, I knew some things, but this book was definitely like, it does say it is with Michaela Angela Davis, but I definitely feel like you can hear Mariah Carey's voice come out in the words. Like, it doesn't feel like it was written by somebody else. Like, it feels very true, if that makes sense. And I found it to be a good memoir. She really reflected. She talked a lot about where her songs came from and the inspirations and stuff like that. So if you're a fan of her music, it's definitely like gives you a good insight of the music, and also hearing about her life. So I thought it was a really good autobiography, probably because I don't know too much, so a lot of it was new information to me. But I think even if you're somebody who is a complete super fan who probably already read the book by the time I'm talking about it, I think you'd enjoy it. Or if you're on the fence, I feel like if you're a fan, you'd enjoy it. Even me being like just not starting to get into her music, but like I've heard a lot of it when I was a child, and now I'm listening to it more as I'm older. And then finally, I read Troubles in Paradise by Elin Hilderbrand, the 3rd and final book in the Paradise series. It ended so well. Also, I absolutely adore this hot pink spine, but I felt like it was a good ending. I was really sad to say goodbye to the characters, but we actually got a cameo from one of the characters from Winter Street in this, so if you've read that series, you're going to love that little Easter egg in there. Then I read Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, which I believe came out in the summer, and this book I really liked. I was reading it during I was kind of stressed out because we're getting more restrictions because of COVID. I was stressed out because of school. I wasn't feeling 100%. There was a lot of issues going on, but I read this in like 2 days. I read it very quick. On Goodreads, it says a bit longer because I did take a pause because I didn't read it at all like on one day, but then I picked up the following day and read so much of it. But basically, this book is about Bea, and she comes from a life of poverty and neglect. And she meets a guy called Samson who comes from a family of wealth. And they find that they spend they find that they're spending their summer as neighbors when Bea goes to live with her dad. And their bond is very intense, and they try to ignore it, but they absolutely can't. And they decide just to have a summer fling, but what they don't realize is that a rip current is coming and it's about to drag both their hearts out to sea. So it's kind of exploring what happens to the characters. You see a lot of character growth, like usual in Colleen Hoover's novels. I feel like they always throw you for a loop, so if you're a fan of Colleen Hoover, I'd definitely give that one a go. I believe that one was independently published, if I'm not mistaken. I couldn't find it on my, I'm in Canada, so I couldn't find it on Indigo, the main book chain in Canada's website, but I did find it on Amazon, and I'm sure if you're a US citizen, you can go on her website as well. I just go on Amazon because I don't think her website would cater to my currency. I really should check that out because I'd rather buy it from her website, but yeah. Anyway, this next book I read, and the second last book I read in the month of December, was The Emperor's Babe by Bernardine Evaristo. And this book was really good. I actually received this as a gift. I did, say that was a book on my list because nobody can really pick out books for me and my family because nobody's a reader besides me. But this book, I really wanted to read more of this author's book after reading Girl, Woman, Other, which is one of my favorite books of 2020. I'll see where it ranks on the list when I, post that video. Hopefully very soon. So I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name, the main character's name in this book, but Zulika. And basically, it says she's a reluctant teenage bride with no idea about true love. This is an 8211, by the way. She's too busy sneaking out the slave girls and drag queens, until one day she catches the eye of the most powerful man on earth, Emperor Septimus, and the trouble really starts. So it says, silver-tongued and merry-eyed, this is a tale to make the muses themselves roar with laughter and weep for pity. Kaleidoscoping distant past and vivid present, the Emperor's Babe sings a song of womanhood and of survival in this thrilling, brutal, breathless world. So this one is told in stanzas as well. So we see, and it moved really fast, and it was really interesting because obviously the present elements that, come up, but it's also set in the past. So I just found it to be a very interesting and complex book. I don't really have too many thoughts to say about that because A, I don't want to spoil it, and B, it just took me on a ride. I read that in one day because it's, with the verses, it just flowed so nice, and I just absolutely adored it. I really want to read more of that author's books. I really need to get on that. That's one of my goals for this year. I want to try to read at least 2 more of her books, if not more. The last book I read in the month of December and the year 2020 was IMC3PO, The Inside Story by Anthony Daniels. Now, I'm a newer Star Wars fan. I think I've been a fan for 4 years now, so I didn't grow up with it. I knew what it obviously was, but my friend Ray, shout out to him, watched it with him, and I needed a buddy. I always wanted to watch it for years, but I needed somebody to guide me through this. I have a lot of questions and comments when I watch things, and I'm like, I feel like it's such a complex world. Like, where do I start watching them? Right now I'm doing a rewatch, but originally me and him watched it in chronological order of date they came out, and then I went back and watched it in the order with the prequels, excluding Rogue One. I think it was before Rogue. I think I just forgot to add Rogue One before after the prequels, but yeah. And right now I'm actually doing a rewatch of the original trilogy. I'm on Return of the Jedi, and I hope to finish in the next few days. There's so much current TV, it's all coming back, and I'm like, I'm overflowed with TV. But this book was amazing. C-3PO is my favorite Star Wars character of all time. I absolutely love him, so I really wanted to read about Anthony Daniels' journey taking on this character. And this book gives you so many insights, especially on how the costuming process went, the pain he had to go through, and how he was treated. Like, everything, I felt like it was a really well-rounded portrayal of that. He also really does a lot of things where he talks about the fans' influence and gives them a lot of credit. So if you are a diehard fan, you have been for years, it's just, he does a lot of fan service, and he gives a lot of inside kind of looks at his relationships with the other actors and what he went through. And I think it was just a fabulous book. If you're a fan of Star Wars and you like that character, I think it's worth it. Even if you don't really like that character, I think it still gives good insights into the process, especially costuming and directing, even just making an equitable workplace. And yeah, love that. So overall, I had a really good reading year. It was very hard to decide, you know, my favorite books, which you'll see that video eventually. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you've read any of these books and have any opinions, let me know. Overall, it was a really strong end to the year. I didn't really have anything where I was like not loving it. I loved a lot of the things I read, as you can tell. I thought there was a lot of good stories within this, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching, which I just said. Lose my mind. So many books I've talked about, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.